This Choircast podcast brought to you by Bros, Bibles, and Beer. You know the conversations that you have with the guys, you have the debates, things go sideways, and then you end up laughing so hard it hurts?
Yeah, now imagine those conversations with actually digging into the big questions.
Zach, do you even like the Bible?
I do, Andy. I just am not sure if God wrote it.
That's blasphemy of the Holy Spirit.
How many beers have you had?
Bros, Bibles, and Beer. Serious conversations on faith and culture without taking ourselves too seriously. New episodes every week.
Western Christianity has spent the last 2,000 years telling everyone they're separated from God.
This is Not Church with John and Nat Turney and Bethany Shea.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. My name is Nat Turney. I'm here with my brother John and our lovely cohort Bethany Shea. Say hi, John.
Hi, John.
And say howdy doody, Bethany.
Howdy doody. That one's different. Did you put that in your back pocket for a while? You're like, when are we going to bring out the howdy doody?
It just came out. I don't know what happened. Apparently,
now I have the song stuck in my head. It's howdy doody time. It's howdy doody time.
Did you ever watch Howdy Doody?
Only in reruns.
No.
I know we did in reruns, but all right.
Yeah, not me. I was homeschooled.
That didn't make it into your homeschool curriculum?
We didn't have a TV.
Oh, I was going to say.
We're those kinds of homeschoolers.
Tell me you were like supremely homeschooled without telling me. No, that was too risque for our household. We didn't. Puppet shows, that's animating inanimate objects. That's
demonic.
That's terrible. No David and Goliath either? No. Well, anyway, I guess we should mention that this is the podcast we call This Is Not Church, because if this was church, we wouldn't be talking about howdy doody. Apparently, we'd be talking about, I don't know, something else entirely.
Maybe we'd use it for a sermon illustration or something.
Funny story. I got in trouble, well, not in trouble, but I guest preached at a friend's church around Christmas time one year, years ago. I preached a pretty dumb sermon, but it was good. But it was like 5 reasons why Jesus is better than Santa Claus.
Nice,
clever. It was like I remember one point being like, well, Santa gives you gifts for being good. God gives us gifts because he loves us. You know what I mean? It was like that. It was good. It was a good message. And I got chewed out by one of the guy's church members for having the audacity to bring Santa into a sermon. And I was like, man, you were just looking probably pissed off about.
Yeah.
So I still see that guy from time to time. I'm like, who's that guy? Anyway, I don't even know why, but as true to form, sometimes I just go off on a rabbit trail. Hey, we have a guest today. We should get busy because we want to get as much awesome time with her as we can. So we're going to introduce you to her and get on the road. Here we go. We're with Aimee Byrd. She's a writer, speaker, blogger, podcaster, and former coffee shop owner. We have to talk. Have you been on the show before, Aimee? You have. Okay, because we've talked about. Okay. I'm sorry. We probably did. I'm sorry. I've slept since then. But anyway, I'm a current coffee shop owner and all those things. But she has written several books, including The Hope in Our Scars, Recovering from Biblical Manhood and Womanhood, and The Sexual Reformation. Her articles have appeared in First Things, Table Talk, Modern Reformation, By Faith, New Horizons, Ordained Servant, Harvest USA, and Credo Magazine. And she has been interviewed and quoted in Christianity Today and The Atlantic. Her latest book is called Saving Face, Finding Myself, God, and One Another Outside a Defaced Church. Welcome back to the podcast. Aimee, how are you?
I'm great. How are you guys doing?
Great.
Bethany's always great.
My daughter is graduating high school today, so I'm super stoked.
What?
I know. It's pretty awesome.
Oh, it's such a momentous day. That's amazing. Awesome. Well, wow. So what have you been up to these days? How's everything going, Aimee?
Oh, I was just telling Bethany and John how my life is absolutely crazy right now. We just sold our house. We have a contract on another house, but we can't move in for several weeks. So we're in transitional rental space right now, short term. And in that transitional time, my daughter's getting married.
Oh my goodness.
Right.
That is crazy.
Very lifey right now.
Yeah. My son and his wife moved, and they moved from Houston back to Dallas. Same thing, sold their house, haven't bought a new house. They're in temporary, in the middle of, in a little tiny apartment while they're waiting to find the right house. And they had a baby. So, they would commiserate with you right now going, yeah, that's a lot of crazy to have happen when you're in the middle of massive other life changes.
Moving is super stressful. So
yeah, I've decided I'm not going to do it anymore.
Yeah, me too.
good idea.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Once every couple of years, my wife and I we both have a collective moment of insanity where we start thinking about, maybe it's time to get a new house, maybe upgrade. And then at some point, one or both of us go, yeah, but we have to move.
Yeah, exactly.
all of our stuff's here. That's fine. We'll just deal with the house.
You have way more stuff than you know.
Yeah.
Way more. And the longer you've lived in a place, the worse, right?
I mean, we got to that stage where we're, needing to get out of our house by a certain day. And, in the beginning, we thought we had it all planned out well. And then you get to that day where, your stuff is having babies, apparently, because the more you're out, the more there is. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is nuts. But let's talk about this new book. The title is called Saving Face, right?
Yes.
Finding myself, God, and one other outside of Defaced Church. Yeah, just give us a little brief overview. That'd be awesome.
Sure. So, I wrote Hope in Our Scars not that long ago. And I talked, a good bit about, going through spiritual abuse, particularly harassment by officers in my denomination. And, they went after my vocation as a writer and were calling ahead of my speaking engagements, warning churches about me and going after my Amazon page and all these things. And I wrote in that book about just the depth of disillusionment in something like that, knowing that so many others have been through spiritual abuse. But the book was really about rising from that disillusionment. And this book, I've stepped out of those spaces now of the denomination that I was in. And my family was trying to find a new church home while also healing from all the abuse. And really this time, it's so easy to say, these were the bad guys. What happened to me was pretty horrible and that I'm a victim here and now I need to heal. But I think after going through something like that, I also, while those things are true, I had to turn in on myself some and be like, what in the world attracted me to a church like that? What was it that I was getting out of that? How did I not see how damaging the system was while others were being harmed in it? And so I had to do a lot of inner work, I think. And so that's what I'm doing in this book. And it's pretty raw. It's a different genre, really, in style of writing than my other books. It's a lot more personal. It's a lot more raw. It's a lot more contemplative. And so one interviewer that I was with, Dan Allender, he called it a theological memoir, in which I kind of liked that. I'm like, okay. So I'm using the metaphor of the face to really talk about self. We spend, here I was in my late 40s and had, going through all this disillusionment in the church. And I really realized that, you spend a lot of your life trying to build this version of yourself that you think you're supposed to be, you think God wants you to be, and the church wants you to be, and to have the Christian marriage and raise your kids in the church the right way. And, I just realized how much persona was involved in all of that. I saw the persona in this church, in this denomination, but I needed to look at it in my own face. And so C.S. Lewis's novel, Till We Have Faces, was a real inspiration for this book. It's a retelling of the story of Cupid and Psyche. And it's told through Psyche's ugly sister, Orwell. She's narrating the story, and she ends up wearing a veil over her face because of her ugliness, and it just gives her more power and more respect as she's growing. And she ends up becoming the Queen of Gloam, and she's writing her argument against the gods throughout the whole book because she knows what love is. She knows what righteousness is and goodness is, and where is God in all of these unrighteous things that are happening in her life. And so she's keeping documentation of all of that. And she gets to the end of her life, and she has this kind of vision where she's kind of passed out, and she has this vision, and she's before the gods, and she's naked, and her veil is stripped away. And they said, read your complaint. So finally, it's her moment where she can read this complaint she's been building the whole time. And there she stands naked, and she looks at her journal, her book of complaints, and it looks kind of smaller than she remembered it to look. And when she opens it up, the writing kind of looks angry and scribbled in a way that she didn't recognize. But she's like, okay, I'm going to read this. And she starts reading it, and she's reading and reading and reading. And she realizes, oh my gosh, I'm saying the same thing over and over and over again. And the gods interrupt her and they say, do you have your answer? And she says, yes, that her complaint was the answer. All this time she's been wanting to complain to God and thought she knew what goodness was and that she was living that life. And she was angry with God for not answering her. But how in the world can she expect when you finally dig out those words that you really mean to say? How do you expect God to face you face to face until you have a face? And I just thought it was such a powerful story because, to get behind to the naked face and realize the holes that we have in the story that we've been telling ourselves and how we've been trying to present ourselves. And to really find our faces. And I believe we need one another to help do that. And that's really where we meet the face of God as well.
It reminds me of the story maybe in Jeremiah, I can't remember, about Joshua, the high priest, and he's standing before the throne of God. And Satan is like there basically destroying his character and saying, like pointing out his ugly clothes that he's wearing, that he's clothed in something dirty, like you suck, basically. And then God empowers like Joshua's community to help change his clothes and to then start advocating for Joshua's humanity, that Joshua is still so important, which is such a weird thing with like Satan and God in the same space. And it's a weird vision, but that sense of like like the community kind of doing the hard lifting of reshaping a person's identity.
Right. Yeah. And I also it's kind of, the book was inspired by C.S. Lewis and by the philosopher Emmanuel Levinas. And he talks a lot about this metaphor of the face. And he one book that I was reading was the whole philosophical question, is it righteous to be? And his whole answer to that question is yes, because my naked face provokes your face to goodness. It provokes your face to bless me. And so that awakening from another person's face is a goodness to ourselves as well. And that's actually where we find God. So he talks about how theology begins in the face of the neighbor. Because of that awakening to goodness, when we get behind the countenance of somebody else's face, we could actually liquidate them if we want. They're vulnerable, right? And he talks about how it awakens the commandment, thou shalt not kill. And I just think the flip side to that, obviously, is to love. And so that awakening to love is such a blessing for us to join in with God's benediction that it is good that you are here.
Wow. Well, it's beautiful, especially in contrast with the prevailing sort of quote unquote moray of the modern church, which is to do the exact opposite, unfortunately, which is to dehumanize and to turn people into caricatures and something that you can easily demonize and dismiss. It's the way that when we were, when I was really active in the church, it's one of the ways we sort of dealt with things we felt were beyond our control. Well, yeah, there's this going on, and then, let's find a way to blame them for that so that we don't feel responsible for it.
Yeah, because we can't handle our own shame, so we project it onto others.
Yeah. And then I'm no longer necessarily responsible to do anything about it.
Yeah. And it's strange because repentance is, supposedly the essence of Christianity, right? Like getting to that real self. And yet we have such a shame culture that we're not actually in an environment that's safe to do that and to show our real self.
Well, and then when we look at repentance, we're really good about allowing other people to repent.
Yeah.
But when it comes to ourselves,
we're demanding it of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and even within that sense of blaming, how it does deflect responsibility on somebody else. It's like, we don't have to be held accountable for our actions or our character. Like in this book, there is this level of you recognizing how you could be in that state of blame and stay there and like fester in that space. And instead you're like, I'm going to confront this. I'm going to confront the stuff that's happening in me. You call that the black mirror, but there's also the confronting of what actually happened. So you're not making what happened seem less horrific, because it was the way that the church treated you, the way that they like held you, in like a court of law without giving you a chance to really give your own voice. That was absolutely inappropriate and so unfair. And I'm so sorry that happened to you. But you also were like, I'm going to take accountability for my own actions, and see myself rightly. And that was super brave of you. I thought that was incredible.
Thank you so much. I mean, it's interesting because, I never used words before like trauma. And, when my own body was reacting in that way, I had to learn more about it. And, one thing I've learned is that, okay, well, this huge thing that just happened is now unearthing other things in my life that had happened in the past that I haven't really processed well. And so one thing I do is it's kind of like a narrative therapy method of story work in the beginning of a lot of the chapters, is to revisit a memory, something that has stuck with me for some reason, and to be curious about how I'm telling that story and what those needs of mine were back then. Maybe it was a memory of where I harmed somebody else, and why did I do that? To get to the heart of why I would do something like that, and to be able to grieve it, but then to also see what it was I was seeking. And that has been something that I think has been like a method of growth for me as well.
Yeah,
and even reconciliation with other people. So it's kind of raw stuff, but I was hoping that it would model for the reader to maybe do some of that work as well.
Yeah, I saw that too. Like that sense of, like it was an invitation. You like modeling the way or blazing the path forward. I felt invited to do the same kind of work. And I was like, what is my earliest memory of myself? And what is my second earliest memory? Like those are thoughts that just don't really cross my mind. So it was really great because you became a mirror for the person that is then reading the book.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Those are potentially painful spaces to visit. I remember writing my book, and mine was part memoir as well. And I remember writing even that, like, going through this process was painful because I had to do something I hadn't done in a while. I'd either repressed or intentionally just not thought about some of those painful things for a while because they're painful. Yeah. And I'd moved on and tried to move on. And then you start to unearth this stuff for some reason, and you realize, holy shit, I'm not totally over this. Like, I still have a visceral response to some of this, but something you said resonated with me. I wanted to explore that a little bit with you. Early on, you said something about having to reflect on your own role in some of this. Did you find that when you were in the midst of this denomination, and before you had become maybe completely disillusioned with it, that you participated in some of those things that you are now critiquing, and then you had to go, oh shit, I did it too? Does that make sense?
I got caught up in it, man. I think I really, coming from a divorced home, and my husband coming from a divorced home and marrying early, like, I really wanted to have the security of being in a good church. The church we were in when I was young wasn't really there for us when all that happened, and I thought maybe that's part of the reason why things didn't work out, and so I wanted to kind of rewrite that story in a better way, right? Be in a good church, have better theology, know God well. And in the denomination I was in, it provided a lot of that kind of security. And the security was in certainty, doctrinal precision, and it wasn't said this way, but, the feeling was that the more you know, doctrinally, and the more precise you are, like that's like sanctification, like that brings you closer to God. And so that felt like security to me, that I was doing right. And sure, I definitely reaped some of the benefits from that as well in my vocation, because I started writing for women to take these things seriously. And so I received some of those benefits. And I even looked down on a lot of the more fluffy books out there for women and things like that. And I think I was starting to feel really good about myself in those ways. So I definitely participated. I try to convey that in the book as well. These areas where, why in the world I got so caught up in this. How did I find myself where I was? What I was telling myself, though, at that time, too. And as I began to challenge some of the attitudes and teaching towards women that I was definitely experiencing, because as my popularity grew, I think, in that denomination as a writer, my influence grew, the more of a threat I became in some ways, especially when I started challenging some of the unorthodox teaching on the Trinity, and then on male and female roles and how they're connected to that. And I, silly me, thought that, this will be helpful. Everybody wants to, really grow in this area, and that, they want their women to be growing, right? Yeah, silly me.
I know exactly what you mean, though. In that, sometimes when you just get really excited about a topic, did you notice that? I just think, this is blowing my mind. I'm reading something and I'm like, I've never thought of this. And I just could not wait to share it with everybody. And then to find out they were not nearly as excited.
Yeah.
They weren't.
They were like, she's the devil.
Yeah. Well, and I was, maybe it was because I was in a place where I was already looking, I was just seriously investigating. And I was very happy to find out something new. And even if that meant I had to go admit I'd been wrong about that, I was in a place where I was wanting that. I guess I was less concerned about, oh my God, I was wrong about this, more concerned with, oh my gosh, but now I see this other thing, and so I wasn't threatened by the new knowledge. I was excited about it. I just naively thought everybody else would be too, and almost nobody was. It was oh yeah, you need to go back and read your Bible. I'm like, oh my gosh, which I'm sure you love to hear all the time, right?
Oh man.
Anyway.
Oh man.
I cut you off when you had a question, Beth. I'm sorry.
No, she answered it. I was wondering what the catalyst was that moved you into becoming the scapegoat for your denomination. And it sounds like once you begin to see that the role of women could be different, the role of the Trinity was different. Yeah, all those things are definitely the ones that usually move people away from their sense of certainty and into a place of curiosity. If they have that curious spirit, then they'll do that. If they don't, then it's a place of fear and they have to double down on what they've always believed.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love that you approached it.
I didn't realize how much this was all about power,
Yeah. Yeah.
I was thinking of empowering, and I didn't realize how much of this was about having power over. And so that was one huge thing. But then even being in these evangelical circles that I was in, there was a lot of parachurch organizations that are in publishing. They are making big conferences. They have many, many books marketed to men and women with this, bad teaching in it, and even about the Trinity. So in 2016, when I challenged the teaching on the Trinity and its orthodoxy, and that became a huge, it was called the Trinity debate. The patristic church father, scholars weighed in. There were conferences, seminaries started changing some things. And so who is this horrible woman who's done all that, because it was I wasn't the only person, but I invited a male pastor scholar, to write about it on my blog, because I knew as a woman, they could shoo me away. And that's when the whole thing started. And so I started making enemies back then, all the way in 2016. And then when my book, Recovering from Biblical Manhood and Womanhood, came out in 2020, well, that's when I took it way too far.
Wow.
Were you in some sort of leadership role in your denomination that like you were a voice for them, that they were so offended by your voice?
Funny part about it, like even in my book, Recovering from Biblical Manhood and Womanhood, that book was also very invitational. I was writing as a lay woman in the church. Very much my writing at the time, I tried to serve the gap between the academy and the regular person on the pew. And I was doing that for the regular people on the pew like me, even though I'm somebody who loves to read the academic stuff. So I became a little bit of a bridge there and made a lot of friends in the academic world and got a lot of help in that way. My editor even was the head acquisitions editor for Zondervan Academic, even though I published under the Zondervan Reflective Arm. So I got a lot of help. And in that book, while I was critiquing some of the damaging teaching within my denomination, it was an invitation to something much more biblically rich, I thought. And it also was not anything to do with even leadership. I wasn't going there. I was just going on spiritual formation and discipleship and how we can enrich that in the churches for both men and women. And that was a huge threat. And that's when I saw, oh, okay, all right, and that's when I started to really look more in depth at this whole leadership thing too.
So what made you decide then, after all that you've gone through, because it is really sad, the things that you've experienced, to keep giving church a shot? Like this book has a lot to do with you trying to find a church community after you've been hurt so much. Like, what made you decide to continue forth in that quest?
A longing, a deep longing to be with God's people, a longing to have a place to bring myself, my whole self, and my family self, and to experience God together, to worship him together, to the promises that are given about his church. One thing that really holds me is the teaching in the Song of Songs. And the teaching there isn't presuppositional, it isn't doctrinal. It is in allegory. It's in song. It's in beauty. And what the woman symbolizes in that is the people of God and the temple of God. And that is such a beautiful picture to me. And it, wow, the fact that it's a woman who does that, so there's a lot more that I want to experience and learn with God's people. And I want that beauty, which will one day be.
Yeah, I mean, when I left the church, I would say that's one of the things that I miss. I miss is the community.
Yeah.
The people that, for good or for bad at the time, we at least had some kind of like-minded connection to God. And there are days where I miss that. And there are times where I'm like, if I could find a church that didn't deal with it so much in patriarchy and so many other things that I find damaging now, could I step back into a church?
That alone is hard to find, just a church without the patriarchy.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm trying to be honest about the state of the church and not be like, go to church, like I saw like a Facebook thing today about, if you're not in church, then it's easier to sin and, then you're far away from God. And I just thought, I'm not sure if that's what's going to get people in the door.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure it's true.
Yeah. I mean, because I've experienced and have seen so much of, there's plenty of that in the church.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and to me, it's, I'm getting to a place where, first of all, I'm getting tired of seeing, big name people in the Christian world being found out for their sin. And it's not anything it's way worse than stuff that I was ever accused of. Just recently had one of the 3 guys from DC Talk is being alleged that he was involved in sexual abuse and all kinds of other stuff. It seems like sometimes those institutions are breeding grounds, especially for people who get elevated inside of those systems, for for opportunities to abuse other people. And I don't know why that is. I think it's a systemic thing. But one thing I noticed, I was never part of a denomination, really. For a brief minute, I was a Foursquare minister of some kind. But even Foursquare is, I mean, yeah, it's a denomination, but it's not mainline. It's not huge. It's a fairly, I don't know. It's almost parachurch in how niche it is. But I watched this happen with people in large denominations, like I'm sure you know about Thomas J. Ord and his ordeal with the Nazarene Church, and actually going through what I was just shocked to find out people still had heresy trials. And he's been through at least 2, maybe 3. And most recently, they actually have stripped him of his credentials and kicked him out of the denomination. That seems 10 times more painful than me leaving my unaffiliated non-denominational church. And that was painful as hell. I can't imagine having the whole machine of a denomination turned on you that way.
It's something that takes years to process. What, the very people that are supposed to direct you towards God and care about your soul are privately and very publicly calling you the most awful things, and trying to, literally dismantle your reputation and your personhood. And it's very humiliating, but it's also, disillusioning. And it's also something that makes you have to ask then, who am I? Am I these things that they're saying? Or, but then you have to re-examine like the story you've been telling yourself, and who's God? What's the story I've been saying about who God is?
Yeah, for
and
sure.
Where will he meet me in this? And what really matters? And I do think church matters. And I don't want to give up in finding a good church. Like I do feel like we're kind of in a parking space right now. We're still having trouble like connecting. And I just want more spirituality in church, but I'm also very appreciative for where we are. And I feel like it's been a good place for me to unlearn a lot of things that you don't realize how pervasive that level of unlearning is that you have to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm super thankful for that. But yeah, I'm also not like feeling judged in there either.
Yeah.
So
what you said earlier about the sensibilities about, and we said this all the time and it was a very self-serving thing to say. I'm sure you said things like this when you were involved in church as well. But, the surefire way to get disconnected from God is to get disconnected from church. And that leads to disconnection from God. So we were always warning people. Of course, we also didn't want people to leave because that was our livelihood tied to them coming and putting money in the plate. But I was even in the midst of my deconstruction and leaving the church, there was a part of me that was like, well, shit, am I just gonna slip into all kinds of stuff and be like, and the truth is, if you're listening right now and you wonder, no, I have not. Now my critics will say he's lost his way, and he doesn't, because they'll see me now as an advocate for LGBTQ folks. They'll see me as speaking out against the things that they think are important. I will easily and happily speak out against Christian nationalism and patriarchy and hierarchy of all kinds, and try to elevate the position of women and queer folks. And so they'll see that's the weird thing about this whole thing, is that's how they will define my sin. Not that I'm engaged in activity that's harmful to myself or others, but that I now advocate for people that they would like very much to exclude and to keep excluding.
Yeah.
But as far as the stuff that we would have sort of typically defined as sin, no. I'm not. I haven't slipped off the deep end into all kinds of debauchery and weirdness. Although I'm open to ideas. I'm just saying. If anyone wants to hit me up, no, I'm just kidding. So I'm with John. There are moments of I guess I sometimes grieve for what my ideal of church was.
Yeah.
And if I could have stayed in some blissful ignorance, you know what I mean? I almost felt like that, like the dude in the Matrix. who just wants desperately to go back, you know? And I resonate with that to some degree. Like, I know this steak I'm eating is not real. I know it's just impulses you're saying in my brain, tricking me into but I don't care. Put me back in. Ignorance is bliss is how he ends that line. And there's a tiny, teeny little part of me that was like, man, if I could have just closed my eyes to all of this shit. And I did it for a long time. Don't get me wrong. That's why I asked you about that participatory thing, because I watched as my church chewed people up and spat them out. And to my shame, still, I didn't speak up for them. And then when it landed on my doorstep, they weren't there to speak up for me either. And so I wasn't brave enough when I saw my church injuring other people. And then when it hit home, it was like, oh, so this is what we've been doing to people. And then I had to reckon with that part I played in, at least in my silence, of watching us harm other people. That's tough. I mean, that's talk about like pulling your mask off and having to look at your own part. Good.
It's in your poverty, and it's in the poverty of others, that so often that if we would just look, into their face, into that, instead of looking away, like that's where we find Christ. And I think I was in a denomination that really emphasized the sacraments, the preached word, and baptism and communion as the means of grace. Like it's through these means, and they really held up the preached word in that way, as if it were the word of God. That same power. Like that is how Christ is given to us. And then you see then, people who have led this way in the church their whole lives falling into major sin. But not only that, I start to find Christ in the poverty of others, right? And in my own poverty. And I think even in the storytelling that I'm talking about and the memories in the book, I find Christ hiding out in my secrets, because he's the one who knows me, right? I went back to my love of the mystics. And I love Teresa of Avila. In her writing in The Interior Castle, she says that if Christ dwells in every single person by his Holy Spirit, then that means that there is some sort of piece of heaven inside of our soul, because that is where God is dwelling. And that is amazing to think about with each person, right? And not only that, if you think about it in the sense of yourself or even your enemy, like that's where Christ delights to dwell, is in our souls. And so if we could do that more contemplative work too, to really think about what that means, to really dealing with, she calls them the reptiles that get in the way of our prayer life, in our inner life. But, like Carl Jung speaks of the shadow self, the parts of ourself, our whole life that we've been stuffing down because we didn't think it made us good enough, or that the messages we got from culture, family, church, whatever it is. And to re-examine those things, because they don't go away. We just project them onto other people. And to understand our relationship with those things. Some of them we need to re-embrace again, right? Like for a man, it might be a sensitivity or something like that. Like, that's not sinful. What in the world? And then the simple parts, to understand that I can't just hide from it. I can't just stuff it in this invisible bag behind me and it goes away. It's there. So how to have this relationship then with that part, how to, it's a part of you. It's not all of you. And so if you're more honest about it, you can find Christ there too, helping to turn your desires, and to understand that we all have that bag, those reptiles, and to help one another see Christ better in all of it. I mean, that I wish we were doing some of that work in church.
Well, yeah, you would think that would be the principal place it would be taking place. I mean, that's if you think about it too, then if what Teresa of Avila says is true, and I think she's part of a great tradition that says that affirms, how else do we recognize God if not for the piece of us that is like that resonates when we encounter it? And we go, oh, okay. Otherwise, how would we know? There must be something in us that is a resonant frequency with that. And it can be found in other people as well. And I think that's one of the ways that we get beyond some of these two-dimensional definitions of people when we go, oh, okay, I might need to look a little deeper, but there's that piece of God that I recognize in you, that I have in me, that we also resonate with whatever God is out there. But we can't do that as long as we remain entrenched and we're so tribal. And that's the one thing I don't miss is, and I think this is becoming more and more the prevailing problem inside of church, is how tribal we've become, and how much we'd like to draw lines and categorize people. It really does. It's odd to me that the deeper you get into it, the harder it is to see that all you've done is do the exact opposite of what Jesus had ever intended for us to do. And you've just gotten more and more deeply into your own little enclave of like-minded people. And you just have this echo chamber going on. So, it's no wonder that they would lash out against somebody who threatens that hegemony and threatens that power structure. But let me know if this, what do you think about this? Because my thought is that people who hold on to power like that have a misconception that power is finite and they have to hold on to their piece of it. Letting go of their piece of it then takes some of theirs away, rather than, I don't view it that way, but what do you think?
I think it's a whole soul-sucking idea of power is, because and it's opposite of what Jesus shows us, The true power is in empowering other people, it's giving power to, like, when you do that, like, that's where your strength is, not in this idea of scarcity that you're talking about and that we need to have power and control over. I mean, I just think that is so bad for our souls. And we use morality a lot of the time to measure those kind of things, which the way we measure morality is kind of messed up too. But and it gives you this false sense of security. And I just think, Christianity is more than a moral matter. Obviously there's morality involved. There's goodness that we are striving in, holiness. But I see holiness now as something so much more dignifying of the humanity of who we are. It's witness, true with the other person's face, helping them draw out who they are, helping them see who they are through Christ's eyes, And so this whole power dynamic thing, I just think is completely messed up, and it is crushing the soul of the church, because I think, first of all, we need to think of Christianity as a mystical matter. We say that we believe in something called a third person of the Trinity called the Holy Spirit, and that is indeed how Christ dwells within us. We say that we believe that we have souls, and yet then we go to church and act, like it's all brains on a stick or something.
Yeah.
So
that dichotomy of concreteness versus mysticism, right? So we love the concrete. I know you have. We've had this discussion before, but that was one of the things that deconstruction helps us deal with is, our need for certainty about everything. But when you said scarcity, it just brought to mind. We lost Walter Brueggemann this week, and when I first read, and I can't remember what book it's in, but he talks about the lie of scarcity.
Yeah,
that's been foisted upon us, that we have that makes us hold tight to everything, because there's only so much of it to go around, and that pervades every area of our life. It could be, what little bit of power we have, or what little bit of status we have, or even the food we have in our house. We have to hold on to what's ours. But the beautiful thing that you're writing about here is that power is exponential when it's shared.
And that's exactly right.
It's explosive when it's like love. Love is not like, and any parent should know this. Like this is not that mysterious. I have 4 children and 5 grandkids. I don't love one of them more than the other. I like a couple of them more than the others. That's different. But when you first are young and having kids, and you're like, oh my God, could I love 2 kids like I like? And it turns out, hell yes. And then 3 kids.
God gives you a lot.
Yeah, and how many people in your life can you also draw into that circle and also share that love with? It's like turns out it's not a scarce thing at all. Turns out it is powerful when it is divided and shared, and then it becomes this exponential explosion type of thing. And if the church would ever really grab a hold of this, and I think that's what happened in the first centuries of the church. I think they got this. There's no other way that a ragtag bunch of miscreants and leftovers and, did what they did and spread the gospel around the world had they not understood this. And then I think in the intervening centuries, we've just lost it as we pursued other things that were way more superficial. So I see you as writing books like this in the grandest tradition of calling us back to ourselves and saying, listen, this is the church is worth fighting for, but we've got to get it back to the semblance of where it was when it understood these things better and wasn't just staking its claim on a territory, which is so much of what we're doing. And I hate to cut us off, but I know that we have a heart out with you at the top of the hour, and I want to be respectful of that. So I think we have so much more to say, Aimee. Thank you very, very much for hanging out with us and for being patient with my lateness. I appreciate that.
Thank you for this lovely conversation and having me on a second time. It always feels good to be re-invited into a space.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, you're always welcome. And when you write another book in 6 months, we'll have you back, and hopefully by then you will be out of your temporary situation and off to your new stuff. But man, we wish you nothing but the best of luck and Godspeed and all of that. And thank you. If you're still listening, and I know you are because it's been fascinating, we'll make sure there's links to where you can buy Aimee's books and you can connect with her in whatever way she has available. But do yourself a favor and buy the new book. And then go buy all the other books. Go back and buy the rest of them too. So you have the whole catalog of heresy there for you to. Of good stuff. So
that's right.
Any parting thoughts, John or Bethany?
No, just what you said. Thank you very much for sharing of your time with us. It's been amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Aimee.
Been a delight. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for listening to This Is Not Church. Be sure to rate and review the podcast on your platform of choice. If you would like to partner with us, visit patreon.com/thisisnotchurch, where you will receive exclusive content such as early access to episodes, videos of upcoming episodes, and live Q&A sessions. Be sure to check out our Facebook group or follow us on Twitter and Instagram. All the links are in the show notes. We'll be back soon with another episode.